This happened shortly after I turned 35. I was looking for stories about small towns while battling a bad case of writer's block. I'd already done a few interviews elsewhere, but this town felt different. It felt like it was watching me. The clock tower rang every hour, and I could hear that muffled sound echoing through quiet streets. I arrived late in the afternoon. The brick buildings looked old but well kept. People were friendly, but I felt their eyes on me. It was like they were too interested in my presence. I shrugged it off and headed to a local diner. The food smelled good, and I thought a warm meal might shake off the unease. Inside the diner it was bustling with customers, but there was an odd hush in their conversations. I caught snippets as I sipped my coffee. "The disappearance," one woman said, "still haunts me." I felt an itch of curiosity. I leaned in, but I couldn't catch more details. When I asked the waitress about it, she frowned and looked away. My heart raced. I paid my bill and left, my mind spinning with unanswered questions. This wasn't just a story, it felt like something bigger. In the days that followed, I spoke to various townspeople, hoping to get more insights. Each story about the disappearance was like a puzzle piece out of reach. A child had gone missing decades ago, they said. Some locals felt a shadowy figure haunted the woods. One man warned me not to go out at night. "People have gone missing there," he said, glancing nervously around. I felt unsettled. What was really happening here? I started noticing strange things around town. The houses lined up in ways that felt deliberate, like a trap. The more I dug, the more closed off everyone became. Their unease hung in the air. I felt chills walking past the trees surrounding the town. People glanced at me, never quite meeting my eyes. Was it fear or something else? Maybe there was truth in their stories. Their fears felt real. I started to doubt myself. Was I ready for the truth? As I headed back to my motel, I glanced at the woods one last time. My heart was pounding. I thought about leaving, but something held me there. Then I heard a sound behind me, a rustle. I turned, driven by an urge to face whatever lurked there. A figure stood just beyond the tree line. It didn't move, just stared at me. I felt a chill. Maybe it was my imagination, maybe it wasn't. I stepped closer, anxious but curious. The figure remained still, its eyes like two dark holes. I knew I should turn back, but something kept me frozen in place. I could barely breathe. Suddenly, it stepped forward, and I stumbled back. Then it whispered, "You shouldn't have come here." My blood ran cold. I turned to run, but I could hear whispers chasing after me, shadows shifting behind trees. I never looked back. I still wonder. I wonder what happened to that child. I wonder if the town was waiting for me too. The next day, I woke up with a tight knot in my stomach. I hadn't slept well. The figure from the woods haunted my dreams, its whisper echoing in my mind. I knew I had to find out more about the child who vanished. I grabbed my notebook and headed out, determined to uncover the truth. I decided to visit the town library. It was a small building, hardly larger than a house. Inside, it smelled of old books and dust. A few townspeople were scattered around, and they barely glanced my way. I approached the librarian, an older woman with grey hair and sharp eyes. When I asked about the disappearance, her face hardened. Nobody talks about that anymore. Her voice was clipped. I pressed on, telling her I was researching local stories. She hesitated, then led me to a back room filled with newspaper clippings and historical accounts. As I sifted through the articles, a pattern emerged. The child had gone missing during a festival decades ago. The townsfolk had searched, but there were no leads. Speculation turned into whispers. Some believed the woods were cursed. Others said the figure was the lost child's ghost. I felt a chill run down my spine. Suddenly, I came across an old photo. The child's smile was bright, but there was something off about the eyes. They looked almost hollow, like the figure from the woods. My heart raced. I flipped it over, and there was a name, Clara May. A memory flashed in my mind. One of the locals had mentioned Clara. Could she be connected to the figure? I decided I needed to gather more information. I asked the librarian if she knew anything about Clara's family. She initially hesitated, but finally mentioned that Clara's parents still lived in town. They rarely engaged with others. I felt a pull to meet them, but a sinking feeling gripped me. Would they welcome me, or would they see me as an outsider digging too deep? As I prepared to leave the library, I noticed the whispers around me had grown louder. I turned to find several townspeople watching me. Their expressions were tense, the air thick with unspoken warnings. My instincts told me to leave, but I was too curious. What were they afraid I'd find? Then, an elderly man stepped forward. His voice was low, almost a growl. "You're stirring up old ghosts, miss," he said. "Best leave this town be." Before I could respond, he turned, and the others followed suit, leaving me alone in the library. I felt the weight of their eyes on me, even as their backs turned. Something was definitely wrong, and just then, as I stepped outside, the sky darkened. The wind picked up, rushing through the trees. My heart thudded. I glanced at the woods, the shadows beyond shifting ominously. Then I heard the whispers again, louder this time, more urgent. I quickened my pace, desperate to get back to my motel. But before I could reach the door, I saw a flicker of movement. Clara's face, pale and cold, appeared at the tree line. She looked right at me, her eyes deep and vacant. It felt like she knew something. I was terrified, yet I couldn't move. Then everything around me dimmed, and I faintly heard her voice, "Help me." I stumbled back, caught between fear and the need to uncover the truth. What had I stepped into? I didn't sleep that night. Clara's face lingered in my thoughts like a shadow, so I spent hours staring at the motel ceiling, replaying her ghostly plea. Every creak of the building made me jump, and every gust of wind felt charged with something sinister. I knew I had to confront the mystery of Clara May. The next morning, with shaky resolve, I decided to visit Clara's parents. I jotted down the little information I had learned from the library and took a deep breath before knocking on the door of the house that looked worn down, like it had seen better days. After a few moments of silence, I heard footsteps inside. The door creaked open just a crack. An older woman's face appeared, her eyes weary and guarded. "Can I help you?" she asked, caution draping her words. "I'm sorry to disturb you, Mrs. May. I'm looking into Clara's disappearance." I trailed off, feeling the weight of the room. Her expression shifted, and I could see the tension in her jaw. "Please, come in," she finally said, opening the door wider. The living room was dim and filled with old furniture. I could sense the memories pressed into every corner. "I'm trying to understand what happened to Clara," I started hesitantly. "Is there anything you can tell me?" She stiffened, but motioned for me to sit. "It happened so long ago. We thought it was over." Her voice trembled. I waited, my heart racing. "Sometimes at night," she continued, a distant look in her eyes. "I still hear her laughter in the wind. I always told myself it was just my mind playing tricks, but—" She paused, caught in reverie. "You shouldn't be digging into this. The past is buried for a reason." My hands shook as I scribbled notes. "But Clara's case, people are still afraid. Why won't anyone talk about her?" Mrs. May fixed her gaze on me, her eyes sharp. "Because the woods take what they want. Clara was different. There were whispers, even back then. Some said she could see things others couldn't. Things lurking." "Lurking?" I echoed, feeling a chill in the air. "Dark things," she murmured. "We searched for days, but it was as if the woods swallowed her whole. And then others vanished too. It wasn't just her." I sat back shocked. "Others? Who?" Her lips tightened, but before she could answer, there was a knock at the door. Her expression changed to one of panic. "You need to leave. Now." I stood, glancing toward the door. "What are you afraid of?" "Get out!" she hissed. I rushed to the door, but just as I reached for the knob, the unmistakable sound of whispers filled the air, echoing Clara's plea. I turned back to Mrs. May, fear coursing through me. What do? I need to help her. Her face paled. Don't make the woods angry. Some things in those trees are not meant to be disturbed. The whispers grew louder, frantic and filled with anguish. I felt a cold weight pressing down on my chest. I needed answers, but this wasn't what I expected. Then the knocking intensified, insistent and harsh. My heart raced as I realized someone, or something, was trying to get in. I glanced back at Mrs. May, but she was staring out the window, horror etched across her face. "It's too late," she murmured. I could feel panic rising within me. What was outside? Then the power went out, shrouding us in darkness. I couldn't see, but I could hear the rustling, a presence creeping closer. I fumbled for the door, my breath quickening. The whispers reached a crescendo, threatening to consume me. That's when I saw it, a figure at the edge of the trees. My stomach dropped. Clara. I blinked, trying to focus on the figure, but it was cloaked in shadows. It stood still for a moment, and then it moved, disappearing into the darkness among the trees. I felt a chill run down my spine. Had I really seen Clara, or was it just my mind playing tricks on me? "Mrs. May," I whispered, desperate to know if she saw it too. I turned to her, but she had pressed herself against the far wall, her gaze fixed on the window, as if she could see through the glass into the night. Suddenly the whispers intensified, a chorus of voices overlapping, filling the room with urgency. It was as if the walls were alive and trying to speak. I could hear Clara's name among the chaos. Fear gripped me. My instincts screamed at me to leave, but I needed to know more. "Please, what do?" I pleaded, stepping closer to Mrs. May, but she didn't respond. Her eyes widened, as if she saw something I couldn't. In an attempt to regain control, I hurried to the door once more. I needed to be outside, to prove that I wasn't losing my mind. I grasped the handle, twisting it, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged. "It's locked!" I gasped. "Don't open it!" Mrs. May shrieked, finally breaking her trance. My heart raced as I struggled against the door. "We have to get out, now!" I shouted, desperate. But just then, the whispers faded into a well of silence. The weight in the air shifted. I felt short of breath. A sudden clarity washed over me. "Mrs. May, what are we dealing with?" She took a deep, shaky breath, her shoulders slumping. "It's the woods. Clara, she's tied to them. If you go looking for her, you may find more than you bargained for." "What do you mean?" I shot back. "I have to find her." She locked eyes with me, despair haunting her features. "The woods hold secrets. For every night Clara's laughter echoes. A piece of her remains trapped. Those who dare to search risk becoming part of it." Before I could respond, the whispers returned, different this time. An urgency, a call. I stepped back, confusion swirling in my mind. Was Clara begging me to come closer, or warning me to stay away? A loud crash made us both jump. Something had broken into the house. Mrs. May stumbled backward, and I turned to see the window shattered, shards glittering on the floor like teeth. I knew then we were not alone. Whatever was outside had breached the barrier, and it was coming for us. With a surge of adrenaline, I grabbed Mrs. May's arm, pulling her toward the back door. "We need to get out of here," I yelled. But before we could move, a deep, guttural growl rumbled from the darkness beyond the broken window. Fear clawed at my throat. "What is that?" Mrs. May's face drained of color. I don't know," she stammered. Right then, out of the shadows, emerged a large figure. It moved with an unnatural grace, and as it stepped into the dim light, I saw its eyes glinting like polished stones. This was more than just the woods. This was a creature from the stories, the ones no one wanted to believe, and it was hunting for Clara. I had to make a choice: stay and face the unknown, or run and leave everything behind. But something deep inside urged me to act, to confront whatever Clara had become. With a surge of determination, I took a step forward. The whispers fell silent, the air thick with tension. "Clara!" I called out. "I'm coming for you!" I stepped into the darkness, leaving the safety of the light behind. The creature's growl echoed in my ears. It moved closer, its eyes still fixed on me, and I could feel the air grow colder. I looked back at Mrs. May, who stood frozen, trembling. "Stay close!" I shouted, pulling her with me. We moved toward the back door, hoping to escape before whatever lurked in the shadows could reach us. But my heart raced as I noticed that the growl was joined by others, distant but near enough to sense the weight of their presence. "Where are they?" I whispered, trying to sound braver than I felt. "Where's Clara?" A sudden flash of light outside the back door caught my attention. I hesitated, thinking maybe there was a way to see through the chaos. I squeezed the handle. To my surprise, it turned easily. I pushed the door open, and a gust of wind rushed in, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of pine and something rotten. Taking a deep breath, we stepped into the night. The woods whispered around us, the same whispers that had filled the house. I shivered as I noticed the shadows dance between the trees, flickering as if something was watching us. "What do we do now?" Mrs. May asked, panic rising in her voice. "We find Clara," I told her, trying to mask my own uncertainty. "She has to be here somewhere." We moved cautiously into the woods, the thrill of fear intertwined with a desperate hope. Each crackling branch underfoot sent fresh waves of tension through my body. The growls had faded, but the undercurrent of danger loomed, a heavy weight pressing on my chest. Then, just ahead, I spotted something white on the forest floor. I rushed toward it, heart pounding. As I got closer, I realized it was a torn piece of fabric. It was soft and delicate, unmistakably a part of Clara's dress, her favorite one. "Clara!" I called again, louder this time, hoping for an answer. "Clara, where are you?" Nothing. Just the rustling of leaves, the wind's mournful sigh. I turned back to Mrs. May, who looked pale and lost. "This way," I urged, holding up the fabric like a beacon. "We need to keep going." But as we pressed deeper into the woods, the atmosphere changed. The whispers grew louder, rising like a storm, filling my head. I couldn't tell if I was losing my grip on reality or if something was trying to reach out. I stumbled, losing my footing on the unseen roots snaking through the forest floor. I fell hard, that moment stretching out like an eternity. When I looked up, the world twisted, shadows flickered with faces, and my heart seized. That's when I saw it. A figure emerging amid the trees. It wasn't the creature, but neither was it Clara. This new presence was something else entirely, something that pulled at the edges of my memory, like a haunting déjà vu. "Clara!" I yelled, terror surfacing in my chest. "Run!" Mrs. May screamed, her eyes wide as the figure stepped closer. But I couldn't move. The figure locked its gaze onto mine, and I felt the ground beneath me tremble. Whatever it wasn't going to let us go easily. I could feel it pulling at my soul, drawing me into the depths as shadows stretched toward us. Realization hit me hard. We were trapped, and just as I thought we were doomed, something unexpected happened. The figure spoke, its voice a chilling echo of Clara's own. "Help me." In that moment I had no choice but to confront the darkness before me, and when I did, everything changed. The figure advanced, its shape becoming clearer. I could see wisps of hair falling over its face, creating a shadow that obscured its features. But it was the voice that tightened my throat. It sounded just like Clara's, layered with desperation. "Help me," it repeated, and I felt a jolt of recognition. It was Clara, or at least a version of her, trapped between the realms of the living and whatever haunted these woods. I wanted to rush forward, to pull her back to safety, but Mrs. May's grip on my arm tightened, holding me in place. "Don't," she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "It's not her. It can't be." "Clara!" I shouted again, my heart racing. "I'm coming!" My mind was caught in chaos. If this was a trick, it was working. But deep inside, I felt the yearning to believe. The shadows loomed closer, swirling around the figure. It didn't feel threatening. Rather, it seemed to cry out for help. "Please, help me," Clara's voice begged. The words burrowed deep into my mind, twisting my resolve. I needed to save her, but how? Just then, the growls came roaring back, a cacophony that rattled the trees. My instincts screamed at me to run, to flee from whatever else was lurking in the darkness. The air thickened around us, palpable and suffocating. "Run!" I urged Mrs. May again, forcing her to move. We dashed deeper into the woods, following the dim light that occasionally flickered through the trees. The growls escalated, now sounding almost like a chorus, a pack that was closing in on us. "Do we abandon her?" Mrs. May shouted, glancing back as we ran. I held the torn fabric tightly in my fist. "We can't," I gasped. "Not yet." We veered left at a thick trunk, and suddenly we stumbled upon a clearing, illuminated by the faint glow of moonlight. There, at the edge of the light, lay a circle of stones, ancient and worn. A sense of dread washed over me as I surveyed the area. "What is this?" Mrs. May whispered, inching closer. Before I could answer, the ground beneath us shuddered, and the growls intensified, echoing around us. The figure stepped back into view, its voice softer but still pleading. "You have to break the circle," it urged, terror lacing its tone. "I can't go until you set me free." "Free?" I echoed, doubt creeping back. "What do you mean?" "Please," the figure cried. "They won't stop till you do." I looked back at Mrs. May, who was now practically shaking with fear. I took a step toward the figure, drawn in like a moth to a flame. I hesitated, feeling the weight of the decision pressing on me. Then everything changed. The growls reached a fever pitch, and branches snapped violently in the darkness. A flash of movement darted behind the trees, something massive. I barely registered what I saw before the ground erupted around us. The glow from the stones flickered wildly, illuminating the fear on Mrs. May's face. I met her eyes, and we both knew. Whatever we were dealing with was far greater than we understood. "Break it!" the figure shouted, its voice tinged with urgency. Just then, I saw movement in the woods. I was not alone, and then a shadow lunged towards us. I barely had time to react before the shadow came barreling into the clearing. It was larger than anything I had pictured, its form dark and menacing under the moonlight. It moved with a speed that made my heart race even faster. "Run!" I screamed, yanking Mrs. May's arm. Our feet hit the ground in a desperate scramble, but my eyes flitted back to the figure that still stood at the edge of the glowing stones. Clara, or whatever it was claiming to be her, was locked in place. Fear etched into every line of its face. "We can't leave her," I shouted, feeling the stubborn pull of the situation. The growls grew louder, reverberating through my bones, as if promising that help was already too late. A loud crash sent debris showering around us. I stumbled, nearly losing my footing. I glanced back just in time to see the creature, a massive, hulking shape with sharp features, emerge from the tree line. There was no mistaking the intent in its eyes. It was hunting. "Please, break the circle," the figure yelled again, its voice nearly cracking. "It's the only way to stop them." I felt a pulse of resolve flood through me, freshly ignited by the figure's pleading. But the fear of what was chasing us held me in place. What if breaking the circle unleashed something worse? What if we were already too late? "Do we trust it?" I gasped, already knowing the answer, but desperate for a second opinion as Mrs. May's face twisted with confusion. I don't know," she stammered, her grip on me tightening, "but we have to do something." In that moment, the choice crystallized for me. We could either run, trying to escape an impending doom, or risk everything for a shot at saving Clara. I had no idea how I would explain this to Clara's parents, or even to myself, but I couldn't abandon her. Not again. "Let's do it," I decided, my heart pounding. "We're breaking the circle." "Are you crazy?" Mrs. May asked, her voice trembling. "No, I'm sure," I replied, my resolve steeling even as fear coursed through my veins. I took a step toward the circle, the dull thudding of my heart echoing in my ears. Just as I reached the first stone, the ground shook violently again. I barely stayed upright. With one swift motion, the shadow lunged, and I heard Mrs. May scream as a huge claw slashed through the air. I turned back and saw a glimpse of the creature, terrifying fangs and eyes that gleamed like knives. "Now!" the figure shrieked amid the chaos. I grasped one of the stones, my fingers trembling as I pushed against it. It felt impossibly heavy, but I could see the light flickering, wavering beneath the weight of some unseen force. It was all happening too fast. I wanted to scream, wanted to yell at Clara to help me, but all I could do was push. "Get away from it!" Mrs. May shouted, pulling me back just as the creature's shadow loomed over us again. "I have to get this done," I shouted back, desperation fueling my words. I pushed against the stone harder, feeling a warm energy ripple beneath my fingertips. The growls morphed into something primal, echoing through the clearing as if nature itself was being torn apart. I took a deep breath and pushed one last time. That's when I saw it. An ancient symbol carved into the stone ignited like wildfire, casting a brilliant light through the dark woods, illuminating every shadow. But even as I felt a surge of hope, I realized that the growls had shifted. They sounded closer now, more frantic. Something far worse was already here, and we were running out of time. The light pulsed brighter than I'd ever seen, cutting through the darkness like a knife. But instead of lifting the weight of fear, it seemed to draw the creature closer. I could feel its hunger, its rage, as it surged forward with a reckless abandon. "Run!" I shouted again, my voice cracking under the pressure. Mrs. May hesitated, her eyes wide with terror. "Come on!" I tugged at her. "We can't wait!" But just as I turned to pull her behind me, I heard it, an awful howling that echoed through the clearing. It clawed at my sanity, forcing my heart to race even faster. Then I saw something I didn't expect. Other shadows began to flicker and stir at the tree line, a pack forming out of the darkness. There were more of them. "How are there so many?" Mrs. May whispered, and I could see the realization wash over her. The circle wasn't just a protective barrier, it was containment. Breaking it could unleash them all, I yelled, grappling with the decision that now loomed dreadfully before us. "The figure said to break it," she replied, desperation tightening her voice. "We have to trust Clara. She wouldn't put us in danger." But I was terrified, my instincts screaming this was a mistake. The light from the stone faded, flickering like a dying flame. I felt the energy draining and instinctively reached out again. If it was our only chance, we had to act. "Grab the other stones," I shouted, my words barely breaking through the growls that echoed off the trees. Mrs. May shot toward a stone, just beyond my reach. I pushed against the one in front of me again, forcing myself to ignore the memory of what it felt like to almost die in this place. But as I did, the stone beneath my palm began to thrum with an unsettling energy. It felt alive, and I felt the pull of something ancient, barely restrained. "Do it!" Mrs. May yelled, her voice cutting through the haze of panic. "Break it now!" With renewed determination, I slammed my palm against the stone. There was a burst of light that surged outwards and a rippling sound that felt like thunder in the air. In that instant I saw the creature's eyes widen, shock and fury radiating from them. But then an unexpected pain shot through my wrist. I gasped, pulling back to see a jagged shard of blackened stone had protruded from the side, sharp as a knife. I could feel the blood oozing from the wound. "Are you okay?" Mrs. May cried, but I felt dizzy, the shadows around me spilling into bright light, swirling in terror and excitement. The stones began to tremble, their power shifting uneasily in the earth. "No!" I shouted, instinctively trying to pull away, but it was too late. The ground trembled violently beneath us, and the shadowy figures emerged from the trees, racing towards us with fervor. I panicked, unable to breathe. The pack was closing in. It surged forward, a whirl of claws and fangs. But among them, I saw another figure break free, a familiar silhouette darting towards us. "Clara!" I cried out, disbelief flooding my voice. But the moment I thought I saw her, shadows engulfed the clearing, blocking her from view. Everything spun, and I lost my footing. Then everything went dark. I gasped as I came to, the air heavy and still. I was sprawled on the ground, soaked in cold sweat. My heart raced, and the echoes of howls still reverberated in my ears. I pushed myself up, staring into the dense darkness that surrounded me. Where was Mrs. May? Panic spiked anew as I tried to look around. The clearing was empty, the stones were gone, and so was any trace of Clara. I stood up, clutching my injured wrist, blood staining my shirt. Each breath felt like a weight pressing down on me. "Mrs. May!" I shouted, my voice hoarse and weak. I stumbled through the thick underbrush, every shadow a reminder of the creatures lurking just beyond the periphery. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't leave her. I squinted into the woods, fought against the chill creeping into my bones. I had to find her. I had to get out of here. As I pushed deeper into the trees, I thought I heard something, a soft rustling, too quiet to be a growl, but enough to freeze me in place. I held my breath, trying to catch any sound. The forest was eerie, almost holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. And then I heard it, a whisper barely audible but unmistakable. "It's coming, you have to hurry." I spun toward the direction of the voice. Clara? Was that her? I wanted to call out, but fear gripped my chest. "Clara," I said softly, "where are you?" "I'm here." The voice was clearer now, but it was still elusive, as if she were right in front of me and yet miles away. "You have to move. They're chasing you." Suddenly, the atmosphere buzzed with energy, the shadows curling around me like smoke. I felt eyes on me, dozens of them, waiting in the dark. My mind raced. I had broken the stones, and the barrier was down. What exactly had I unleashed? With urgency surging through me, I followed the sound of Clara's voice, weaving between the trees. I stumbled but pressed on, my feet moving on instinct. The whispers grew louder, their tones warning and coaxing, and suddenly I was standing in front of a crumbling stone structure I hadn't noticed before. It looked like an old altar, jagged and cracked. A chill crept over my body. I could sense the weight of something ancient and powerful lingering in the air. That's when I saw it, a figure cloaked in shadows, standing at the edge of the clearing, watching me. My stomach dropped. "Stay away from the stones!" The voice rang through me, an echo of Clara's. "They're not what you think!" But it was too late. The shadows around the altar began to stretch, reaching toward me with hungry energy. I turned, adrenaline kicking in hard. Then I realized I wasn't alone. Behind me, wave after wave of those dark figures emerged, their red eyes glowing with malevolence. Despair washed over me as I spun back towards the altar. Clara's voice urged me forward, but my feet felt like lead. I was trapped. I needed to decide, fight or flee, and just then a bright light pierced the darkness, emanating from the altar, illuminating the entire clearing. I shielded my eyes and felt the heat from it wash over me. "Trust me," Clara's voice echoed in my mind, just before I realized the light was growing, threatening to consume everything. But was it salvation or another trap? I had to choose. As the light surged toward me, clarity pierced through the fog of fear. Clara's voice echoed in my mind, guiding me, urging me forward. I took a hesitant step toward the altar, feeling the warmth envelop my skin. The dark figures recoiled, shrinking back from the light as if it burned them. "Trust the light," Clara urged. Her voice was strong now, not a whisper, but rather a firm command that resonated deep within me. I stood there for a heartbeat, torn between the fleeting safety of flight and the desperate hope of confronting whatever darkness had taken hold. Blood dripped from my wrist, grounding me in the moment. "I'm coming for you," I shouted into the shadows, not knowing if Clara could hear me. In that instant, something shifted. The shadows flickered, their glowing eyes faltering. It was like a tether untied, and a swell of energy flowed from the altar, a resonance that vibrated through my bones and connected with my very core. I clenched my fists, face set with determination. I rushed toward the altar with a singular thought. I had to break whatever hold this place had over Clara. The shadows writhed like angry serpents, but I pressed on, throwing myself into the radiant light. The moment I crossed the threshold, a violent tremor shook the ground. The light expanded, illuminating the clearing in its entirety, swallowing the darkness whole. I felt Clara's presence beside me, an ethereal force guiding my movements. It was as if I could sense her pain, her longing to be free. "Break the seal!" Clara cried again, her voice merging with the pulsing energy of the altar. I placed my hands on the stone, felt its cold texture meet the heat radiating from the light in a jarring contrast. The connection was electric, and as I closed my eyes, visions of the past flashed before me. Clara's laughter, her playful innocence, and the shadows that had claimed her. "Clara!" I shouted, desperation fueling my strength. "I won't leave you behind." With every ounce of will I could muster, I pushed against the altar, willing it to respond. The moment I did, the light exploded outward, a blinding flash that consumed the clearing. I felt Clara's spirit intertwine with my own, and for a flicker of time, everything became still. Then the darkness roared back. The shadows screamed in anger, writhing violently as the light overwhelmed them. I opened my eyes to see the figures thrashing, their forms distorting, unraveling like smoke caught in a gust of wind. Clara's presence surged beside me, strong and unwavering. "Now! Release it!" she shouted with a newfound power. Taking one deep breath, I pressed harder against the altar, feeling the energy swell, the boundaries of light expanding, until I could barely hold my ground. The shadows shrieked, echoing with anguish as they drew further away from the light, separated, scattering in all directions like a storm fleeing from dawn. The ground shook as I felt an unseen force breaking, a seal or perhaps a curse unraveling. Shadows faded into the forest, losing their shape, their voices merging into a long, sorrowful wail that echoed through the night and faded away into silence. And then it was over. I slumped forward, breathless and disoriented, my hands resting on the now dull stone of the altar. The air hummed softly, resonating with remnants of light flaring in the wake of the darkness. But I was alone. "Clara!" I called out, dread blooming in my chest. The shadows had retreated, but the absence of her voice sent panic crashing over me. The clearing was eerily quiet, and I could only hear the wind whispering through the trees, brushing against my cheek like a ghost. "Clara!" I yelled, desperation spilling out of me, but received only silence in return. Finally I turned, fear squeezing the remnants of hope that lingered in my heart. I needed to leave, to return to the town and tell her parents what I had seen. But as I stepped away from the altar, the light dimmed further into the night. I moved back through the woods, every sound amplified in the stillness. What awaited me in the morning seemed distant, the town's silent facade looming in my thoughts. Though the creature had vanished, I felt the echoes of its presence lingering close. Days passed before I made my way back to the town. I relayed the story to Clara's parents, saw their eyes harden with the burden of grief. But when I left their home, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still out there, a lingering question. Had she truly been freed or only displaced? To this day I still wonder if Clara's laughter fills the wind at that time of year, if she moves among the trees in a different ink of place, or if she is forever caught in the shadows that still twist through the woods. Maybe those fears will never fade, but the memory of her light guides me through the darkness, a bittersweet reminder of the things that linger just beyond our understanding. I can hear the whispers sometimes. I wonder if they still speak her name. I guess I'll never truly know.